Today we're going to take a look at a build of Negan the Cold Blooded. This is from the Secret Lair Walking Dead build, and it is going to be mean. So Negan costs black, white, red, and 2 generic to cast for a legendary creature human rogue that is a 4/3. When Negan enters the battlefield, you and target opponent each secretly choose a creature that player controls, then you reveal them, and those creatures get sacrificed. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a creature, you create a treasure token. The nice part is this doesn't target the creature, so if the creature has hexproof that you're choosing, or if it has ward, it doesn't matter. Negan gets around that because you're targeting the player and you're choosing a creature, not targeting a creature. If you choose a different creature than that opponent, they're going to lose both. So the goal here is to try to think which one they're going to choose, try to maybe outsmart them. If you know that you want to get rid of their commander, maybe throw a couple words in there about their commander and how powerful it is to try to get in their head. Hopefully they pick their commander and then you choose something else. Even if you're choosing a silly token, that way you're getting the 2 creatures off the field and you're kind of doing some head game stuff, which is very true of Negan style. Let's take a look at the creatures that Negan runs. He runs 31 creatures in this deck. We run Disciple of the Vault for a black mana. When an artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may have target opponent lose a life. And artifact tokens do hit the graveyard, just so you know. You do sacrifice them. They technically hit the graveyard and then they are gone. So you are able to generate a lot of value with Disciple of the Vault and treasures. Esper Sentinel for card draw because we need cards. Blood Artist. When Blood Artist or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So this is great for Negan because we're going to be able to have our opponents sacrifice creatures, and then on top of that they're also going to lose life and we're going to gain some life. Cathar Commando can be flashed in and then we can pay 1, sacrifice it, and destroy an artifact or enchantment. Charming Prince has a couple things that we can choose. When it enters the battlefield, we could choose to scry 2, gain 3 life, or exile another target creature, aka flicker Negan. The nice part is if we don't need to flicker Negan at that moment, maybe the gaining life or the scrying is valuable to us too. So it does have other uses besides the 3rd ability. Corpse Knight is another way for our opponents to lose some life. Jury can get real powerful because whenever we sacrifice a permanent, we put a +1/+1 counter on Jury. And then when it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any creature. So over the course of the game, Jury, if it gets out early, can be very powerful. Reckless Fire, when an artifact enters the battlefield under our control, then Reckless Fire is going to deal damage to each opponent. This can be very powerful as well. Of course, we're running Academy Manufacturer because why not? We want to be able to get tons of value from making treasures, and this will help us make even more beneficial things besides treasures. Flesh Bag is nice. Each player sacrifices a creature. You sacrifice the Flesh Bag Marauder to its ability, and your opponents have to sacrifice something else. Flicker Wisp, obviously in its name, it's going to flicker something. It's a way to flicker Negan. It could also flicker something like the Charming Prince. So you'll notice some of our other creatures in the deck can be flickered besides just Negan, which is nice for some value pieces. Imperial Recruiter is going to allow us to search our library for a creature with power 2 or less and then put it to our hand. Ingenious Infiltrator, whenever 1 or more artifacts enter the battlefield under our control, it's going to deal that much damage to each opponent. So you'll notice a trend here. We're doing damage for doing things our deck wants to do. Mayhem Devil is another way to do that, except it counts whenever a player sacrifices a permanent. So if our opponents have treasure tokens and sacrifice them, then this is one way to deal some damage to them too. Merciless Executioner and Playcrafter have the same kind of effect. When they enter the battlefield, each player is going to sacrifice a creature. We are going to sacrifice them to themselves. And the only thing about Playcrafter is if a player can't sack a creature, they discard a card. Professional Facebreaker, besides having Menace, will help us make some treasure tokens, and then we can also use those treasure tokens to get cards off the top of our library and play them. Witty Roastmaster is another way to deal some damage. Zorn is a way to get some more treasures, some more mana, some more ways to have things to sacrifice so that the things like the Mayhem Devil will trigger more. Felidar Guardian is another way to flicker. Gisa is nice because we can then take the stuff our opponents sacrifice and we can get them as tokens on the battlefield. Carter is pretty mean because when Carter enters the battlefield, we're going to goad all of our opponent's creatures if one of those were to die, they're going to lose a life and we're going to gain a life. And the nice thing is we could flicker Carter with something like the Flicker Wisp or the Felidar Guardian. And so we are able to have Carter keep our opponents goaded for a little while and keep the hate off us. Mirkwood Bats is another way to lose some life. Perforos is on the maybe board to be cut. The only reason it is good because we can do the damage to our opponents, which is nice when we're flickering things, but we can also pump up our creatures, which is nice too. It is on the cutting board as a maybe cut, but it does have some good value inside of this deck. Restoration Angel has flash and flying and is a way to flicker things. We're playing Negan, we might as well play Rick, right? Rick allows us to choose from First Strike, Vigilance, or Lifelink. And then humans of the control have those abilities when we choose 2 of them, which is nice because a lot of our creatures are humans. And so we could choose things like Lifelink, which would be great, and Vigilance, for example, or whatnot. And then as long as we control 4 or more humans, our humans also get +2/+2. Shoulder the Apocalypse is great. We're going to draw some cards, gain some life. Our opponents are going to draw some cards and lose some life. Clackbridge Troll is going to ask the question, who do we want to give the goats to? And then, do they really want to sacrifice things and keep the Clackbridge Troll tapped down? If they do, that's perfectly fine. We're going to gain some life. We're going to draw a card. And if not, Clackbridge Troll is going to smack in for 8 somewhere. Gary, well, why not? Help our opponents lose some life and us gain some life. And Gary's another great target for something like the Flicker Wisp to be able to really drain our opponents quickly. Sir Conrad is another way to ping things down. And then we can also dump some extra mana into it to try to get things in our opponent's graveyards to continue to punish them. And Marionette Master is great because we can dump a bunch of extra things into this and we are able to then do some damage. We're light on sorceries, but we do run, of course, 2 tutors and we run Farewell because there might be a point in time where we need to get rid of some things from our opponents, even if it does hurt us a little bit. Most of our instants allow us to either flicker things or tutor things or are reactive, and either way everything punishes. So Cloud Shift is a way to flicker, Ephemerate you'll see is a way to flicker, Flicker of Fate, many pieces that allow us to flicker things like Negan, like the Clackbridge Troll, and many other creatures we have in the deck. We also have ways to punish our opponents, like Abrade is a way to get rid of some things, Crackling Doom deals some damage, makes our opponent sacrifice things. We also have Kaya's Guile, which is very nice. We can choose a couple pieces here. We can choose that each opponent's going to sacrifice something possibly, and maybe we gain some life wherever we are at the game. Soul Shatter, they're going to have to sacrifice the highest converted mana cost among creatures and planeswalkers they control. Vona's Hunger is easy for us to get the Ascend, and then each opponent sacrifices a creature. But if we Ascend, they have to sacrifice half the creatures. So this is a good way to get rid of some stuff off the field. Artifacts are kind of light because we are going to be making treasure tokens throughout the deck, but we do run a couple mana rocks, as you can see, and then we run things like Panharmonicon to double the ETB triggers, so they double things like the Negan effect. Conjurer's Closet to allow us to flicker things. In terms of enchantments, we run Impact Tremors as another way to deal some damage to our opponents. Smothering Tithe makes treasures, and Teleportation Circle allows us to flicker things. So you'll see the flicker trend here, very heavy in this deck. Lands are kind of what you would expect in this deck, nothing too crazy. We do run Castle Locked Away to try to draw some cards because we do need to have cards in our hand to be able to continue to flicker things. Cavern of Souls to make our possibly humans uncounterable. Field of Ruin is a way to get rid of a pesky land that our opponents have. Bajuka Bog gets rid of someone's graveyard. Field of the Dead is here so we can make some zombies. It's on theme with what our deck is trying to do, but it is also on theme with the Walking Dead. Ghost Quarter is another way to remove a pesky land. And you'll notice that we do run no duplicate copies of things because of Field of the Dead. So that's why you will see the snow-covered lands, because we run, technically then we have 2 mountains, 2 plains, and whatnot in the deck. And then we tried to add as many of the dual type of decent dual lands, like the ones that will come in and will check whether or not we have 2 or more other lands or whether we have 2 or more opponents, because they're still great for color fixing. And then of course they are helpful because they more than likely, even late game, they do come in untapped for the opponents check lands, so that's not bad. Are there any other cards that you would suggest in Negan that you have tried out? Do you have experience playing Negan, or have you just gone against the other side of Negan and been hit with Lucille? Let us know some of your experiences with the Negan deck in the comments below.